everybody, I wanted to give you a quick update on the Gigatron. Now this is the computer that has no microprocessor. I did a video about this around 6 months ago where I assembled the kit and demonstrated what it can do. And one of the things I complained about is that there was no keyboard and no way to really do anything on it outside of the few programs it came with. Well, that may change now. I've been sent a new ROM chip which promises some much needed new features. And here's something called Pluggy McPlugface, and it should allow me to connect a keyboard. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take a look at this keyboard interface, and as expected I'll need to assemble it myself. There's just a few components, but I noticed this note about mounting U1 to the other side first, so I guess I better do that or it might be difficult to assemble the rest. So this is U1. It's a tiny little microcontroller with only 8 pins in a socket. It's amazing how small it is. I didn't even know you could get microcontrollers with so few pins. So anyway, I'll go ahead and solder this thing into place. And next I'll go ahead and stick the D-sub connector on there. And then I'll turn around and solder that into place. And then I mounted the PS2 keyboard connector, and believe it or not, that's all there is to this particular device. This actually plugs straight into the joystick or gamepad port on the rear. Of course, in order to make use of this, I'll need to remove this version 1 ROM chip, and then I'll put version 3 down in there. I never saw version 2, so I guess we'll skip right over that. Now, I'll plug in my PS2 keyboard, and let's power it on. I noticed there are a few more things on the screen now. The good news is I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to navigate. Let's try Tetronus. That sounds like a Tetris clone, and I hope it is. And it is! I wasn't expecting it to have a musical track as well. There's something really dirty about the waveforms produced by the Gigatron. I mean, I know they're all software generated, but they don't sound like square waves, but not quite like sawtooth either. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but it still works. And considering the technical constraints of this computer, it's hard to complain about much of anything. And this Tetris game is very playable. I don't know what I pressed, but somehow I triggered an Easter egg. However, this would be a good opportunity to show the new speed modes. So, as you know, the Gigatron uses software to generate the video display. So, these blank scan lines you see is when the software switches to allow the CPU to do other stuff. Now, the new version has 4 different modes you can access with page up and page down. Now, this is slow mode, but all the scan lines are used. And then you can speed it up like this. And each new speed sacrifices an additional scan line. Okay, let's try bricks next. Okay, it's like a Breakout clone, and it's not half bad to be honest. I'm sure Steve Wozniak would approve. And next I'll try the tic-tac-toe game. Okay, this looks like it was written in BASIC, and it seems really similar to the version that's inside this old BASIC book from the 1970s. It's clearly not optimized for the Gigatron since it treats the screen like a plain text terminal. Well, speaking of BASIC, let's take a look. So it runs Tiny Basic version 2, and you get a little over 9K to work with, which isn't bad. That's 3 times what the VIC-20 had. So the screen, of course, is very low resolution, and that has to do with the way the Gigatron generates its video signal. So this means we get a text resolution of about 26 by 15 characters. That's actually less than the Commodore VIC-20 could display, so it takes some getting used to with such chunky characters. BASIC works more or less like expected. I thought I'd try typing in one of their example programs on the website that turns the keyboard into a piano. So I printed it out to paper to make it a little easier to type in. And this reminds me quite a bit of typing in programs from books and magazines back in the 1980s. Okay, so here's the program in its entirety. Let's run it. Okay, that was to be expected. Finding a syntax error is part of the experience of manually typing in programs. Another odd thing I noticed is that the list command doesn't work like on other computers. I wanted to just list line 2, but it doesn't seem to recognize that. So, to look at something I have to press Ctrl-C at just the right time to stop the listing. Anyway, I finally found and fixed all of the errors, so these are the keys on the keyboard that I can use for playing music. Let's see if I can play something else. Rats, not enough keys. Okay, so here's something I think you'll find interesting. If I type save, it will save this program. No file name or anything. It's kind of slow and saves one line at a time. But the Gigatron doesn't have any non-volatile memory, so where's it saving it to? Well, believe it or not, it's saving it directly to the little microcontroller on the keyboard interface. However, it doesn't have much storage, only about 500 bytes. So that works out to maybe 20 to 30 lines of basic code. This piano program is about as big as it can fit. However, if you use one of the larger controllers that are available, it has a larger storage space. Okay, so once it's saved, how do you get it back after power cycling the computer? Well, you might think you could type load, but that doesn't work. So apparently you press Control F3 together and it starts this up. Now what I think is happening here is that the keyboard controller is simply typing this code right back into the BASIC interpreter for you, rather than loading it into RAM. Still, it works. Now here's something cool. You can use poke and peek. Memory address 43 contains the foreground color, and 0 is black, and I think that may be somewhat easier to read. Oops, typo. You can also change the background color with address 42. I think white on black is much easier to read than the default color, but speaking of colors, I wanted to write a little program here to take a look at some of the colors. Now while the Gigatron has very limited screen resolution, it does make up for it somewhat by having 64 colors, and all of these can be displayed simultaneously with no limitations. So in that regard, it's better than most 80s computers. And here's another little program I wrote to play around with colors. And while I was thinking about it, if you remember the episode I did on the Maximite computer a while back, I wanted to see how fast it could draw random lines on the screen, and it turns out it was pretty darn fast. And I had compared it to a similar program on the Commodore 128, which ran about this speed. So I was curious how the Gigatron would stack up. It took me a bit to figure out how the line commands work because it isn't like I was expecting, but I managed to get it working, and the speed is in the same ballpark as the Commodore. But keep in mind we have 4 different speed modes here on the Gigatron, so if we put it to the slowest mode, that uses all of the scan lines, then it's painfully slow. And let's try going over to the next mode. Okay, that's quite a bit faster. And the next. Okay, even faster. And here's the fastest mode. So what other neat things can you do? Well, the screen RAM location can be moved, and if you type in this command, you'll actually be able to see what's in the other parts of RAM. In fact, you'll notice as I type, you can see changes over here, which I think is the command buffer. Also, remember the blinking lights? You can modify those too with address 47. Apparently 9 is the default delay time, but if you put something like a 2 in there, you'll see the lights speed up a lot. And if you change it to a bigger number like 20, you'll see it slows down. And using address 46, you can stop the animation completely and control the LEDs manually. So if I wanted to turn them all on, for example, I could put in a 15, which in binary is 4 ones, or a 0 to turn them all off. Or if I just wanted to have 2 of them on, I could put in a 3. Again, you have to think binary to know, which lights this will affect. Of course, you could incorporate that into a basic program and create your own custom blinking patterns. So anyway, what is the final verdict on the new Gigatron update? Well, don't throw away your Xbox or your gaming PC just yet, but I think it's actually a really fantastic update compared to the one I reviewed 6 months ago. I mean, now it's interactive and there's a lot of neat things you could do, and I could probably spend a lot of time writing little neat programs for this. For example, one program I thought would be really cool would be to draw or to create an art program in BASIC, and I think it would be perfectly capable of running such a program where you could create pixel art and stuff like that. And I think it would be really well suited to that. The only reason I didn't do it was because there's no real way for me to save the program just yet, because my microcontroller that it goes into wouldn't hold a program that big. But it could be done, and that would be something that would be fun to do with it. Anyway, so that about wraps it up for the Gigatron, but I had a couple other things I wanted to mention. In fact, quite a coincidence, the last time I did a Gigatron video, I mentioned something at the end of the video about what my dream computer would be. And I posted an article on my website and a link to it, and a lot of people went and looked at that and discussed it, and I got a lot of feedback on it. Well, I've actually updated a new article, which I'm putting a link to in this description, because things are moving in this regard. So I'd be curious to see what you think of the new ideas and the progress being made in that front. So check that out. And speaking of updates, a while back I did a review on the C64 Mini, the little modern version of the Commodore 64. Well, I just actually received a new version of this, which was the release for North America, and it's got a lot of new updates and supposedly fixes and improvements on it. So I'm going to be doing an update on that here next, and we'll see. I'll run it through its paces, and we'll see how much it's better or if it is any better. So anyway, stick around for that, and thanks for watching.